Hi, here's a question for you. Are you a humble person? Difficult to answer that one. If you say you're humble, it sounds as though you're not humble. Or perhaps never really thought what humility is. Jesus said, the humble person will be exalted. The one who tried to exalt himself, put himself up, will be humbled. There's a character in David Copperfield, you know, Dickens' novel, called Uriah Heep. Oh, and he's always, and I'm a very humble man, he says. Oh, clearly he's not humble. It's pretense. Humility isn't saying that you're no good. That's not humility at all. Real humility must be truth. So that means you have to know your giftedness. You have to know what you're good at. And accept it as gift of God. Not you've got any right to it. Real humility is accepting your giftedness as given by God. And so I accept what I am and I attribute it to God. Then why do I go upset? I get upset when people put me down or don't recognize it. People pass over me, or even I get upset when somebody else does better because it reflects on me. If I accept it as a gift of God, why am I upset? Hey, well now just think for a minute, you are listening. Recall a time, a moment when you were upset by what someone said to you. Just think what it was. Upset because someone suggested someone better than you or put you down. I don't mean if you wanted to celebrate your A-level or GCSE results. Now that's different. When you've done something well, you want to celebrate with someone. A bit like if you had a bad illness and you've suddenly had or eventually had a scan and it's all clear, you want to tell people. I heard of one girl recently done her A-levels. She never thought she'd get through, but she did, and she did really well. And she rushed off home. The first person she met was her grandma, and she said, "Grandma, I got an A and 2 B's. And her grandma said, "We're having pasta for supper tonight." Oh, you can understand her feeling down then. Not that she's showing off. But in other ways, this is where we go against it. When we get upset because someone puts us down or doesn't pick us up as much as we should. And there comes a destructive element in us which wants to put people down so that we look better. It might be just one-upmanship. We might joke about that. But no, it eats into people. Really capable people are upset that someone looks better than them. It's an element, there's a thing in the Old Testament which calls a proud man's malady, which is an evil that eats into him. Not only a man, women, anyone, we have it. That's something which eats into us, which will make us want to put other people down so that we look better. It may be silly, but it's a terrible thing. Now, I heard recently about a couple who moved house, and they went and they found they were living next door to a young family, young couple with 2 small children, and they were well received. And while they were sitting at breakfast one day looking out of the window, the young mother next door came by to hand the washing up. And the wife said to her husband, "No one's ever taught her how to wash. Look at that washing. It's It's not really washed properly at all. Someone ought to teach her. And the husband, wisely perhaps, kept quiet. Anyway, 2 or 3 days later, the same thing happened. The young woman from next door came and put up her washing, and it really wasn't properly washed at all. The wife said, "Look, dear, look at that. Someone really ought to teach her how to wash." He said nothing, but about 3 or 4 days later, the woman came out to hand out the washing, and as they looked, the wife said, "Hey, that is really clean." Someone must have said something to her to teach her how to wash. And she looked at her husband and said, "Did you say anything?" And he said, "No, I cleaned the windows." How often do I need to have the windows cleaned so that I may see straight? I'll tell you, something happened to me 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was in our local cathedral for some service, and I noticed a woman at the front, somebody I don't know well, but she's always interfering, leaning forward to a child in front of her, another family, to show where she should be in the hymn book. I got really irritated, always interfering, quite unnecessary. So I looked back and I looked down to the hymn. I got on with it. A few minutes later I looked up. Oh no, I made a mistake. It wasn't the woman I thought it was. It was a lovely woman I happened to know. I thought, isn't she good, helping that girl in front of her? "Michael," I said to myself, "your windows need cleaning." Not to see who I'm talking to, but to be open to the truth instead of what I think it is. Not only me, much holier people than me. Some years ago I used to go to a hospice for the dying. It was run by some religious sisters. They are totally devoted. And when I think of people talking about euthanasia, dying with dignity, I say they should go there. They'll see people die with dignity. People there are dying, and these sisters will stay by their bedside all day and all night. If they wake up or if they're half conscious, they know someone's there looking after them. They're marvellous people. And then I met a young girl from Sweden who came over. Really, she was looking for God, I think would say. She had no religious sense, but looking for something important in her life. Someone suggested she should get a job at the hospice, which she did. And as well as the sisters, she got on very well with the young girls who were cleaning and sweeping the floor and working in the kitchen. And she mentioned to one of the sisters how well she got on with these young girls. And the sister said, "Oh, don't waste your time with them, they're skivvies. You've got better things to do with your stuff." This wonderful person giving her life, nursing the sick, taking them to their death, looking down on some young girl who's come for a job. Perhaps homesick, I don't know. There's something in us which doesn't look to people who we might think are unimportant. Jesus once said this, listen, "When you have a party, don't invite your family and friends or people who are going to pay you back. Invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, who can't pay you back." We don't need to have a party. And when we talk about the lame and the crippled, Jesus was just indicating people who were disadvantaged in his time and looked down on. Not necessarily poor, but people in our lives we take for granted and ignore. I was talking to a man a little while ago. He's a security officer in a big block of offices. He's got a good job. But he said to me one day, I almost wonder if I exist half the time. People come in and walk past me as if I was a cardboard cutout or something. The nearest anyone has ever said anything to me is there anyone I can talk to? It was like that. I was reading recently, after Nelson Mandela died, one man who's got a good job in London, he's a chauffeur for the government. So if there's an important person, like might be a president of some republic visiting, and he's going to go and visit the Queen in Buckingham Palace, this man will drive him. He likes the job, he sees important people. But he has said, when he drove Nelson Mandela, he was the first person, the only person who stopped to talk to him, ask him how he was and ask about his family. And they wasn't complaining about the others, they have important things to think about. But Nelson Mandela was the one person who saw him as a person. There's something in us which ignores people who we think are less important. We need them. If you were on a plane and a child is screaming his head off, making noise all the time, or in church for that matter, what's your reaction? They say, oh, can't that woman keep the child quiet? Or is it, oh, that poor woman doing what she can. She's faced with this so much. That child is overexcited. I wish I could help her. Being aware of the woman, of what she's going through, or am I just aware of how it upsets me? That child is important. I know one child with Down syndrome. Everyone loves her. Oh, she was a lovely kid. Oh, well, kid. Actually, she's about 20, but it looks as though she's about 12. And I thought, but if she was dribbling all the time and screaming, people wouldn't love her quite so much. Something in us which is poisonous. You know, if you get on a bus or a train, if there's someone there who really looks rather deformed and unattractive, the seat next to that person will be empty until all the other seats are taken. Automatically, we avoid it. We need those people. In fact, it reminds me of when I went to Hampton Court. In Hampton Court, they have the longest vine in the world. It's beautiful, not just because of its length. You don't really see its length in a way because it's a long glass house, but it's up and down, zigzagging. So it isn't just the length of the thing. But the grapes are beautiful, purple in season. And the leaves, it's so well cared for. And then at one end, there's a dirty old root. Why don't they get rid of that dirty old thing? And if they did, the whole lot would be dead wood. We need the people who we can discount and think unimportant.